hit like, and subscribe. You're watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel.
Peace, family. This is your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. We are holding Night School where we break down the most controversial subjects, the most engaged debates, the most interesting topics going on in the world today. And tonight is absolutely no different. We got a lot of cool stuff going on in the world, a lot of bad stuff going on in the world, and we are going to try to cover the interesting big stories for the day with a deep dive. It's not a TV show, it's not a podcast, it is a global classroom, and that is always the distinction. And I want to start somewhere. Well, I got a few thoughts, but I won't subject y'all to all of my random thoughts. My more random thoughts will be tomorrow night at 10:30 when we cover some pop culture stuff. But there's a lot going on in the pop culture world that is just bugging me out, and I have so many thoughts and feelings about it. That said, tonight we got people shouting in, coming in, shouting out, whatever, from all over the world. Again, it is a global classroom. Shout out to Grizz 100. Shout out to Metallica Michelle. Shout out to DJ Harris. Victor Brown, I'm so sorry for being late. I apologize. You're absolutely right, everything you're saying. But we're going to do our best to make this right. We have a new, in the next week or so, we have a plan that is going to change the way we do night school a little bit. Still working out some details. I'm not trying to be mysterious, but it will ensure that you get everything on time, on the regular, as well as making sure that there are new possibilities for delivery, new possibilities for dialogue, more content, and more interesting content in some ways. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited to hear from Hail Mary in Mississippi. M-I, crooked letter I. Crooked letter I. Humpback, I. Epiola Claydor. Yo to the Noops. The good Noops from Shaker Heights, Ohio. I love y'all, man. I appreciate y'all more than you know. The chat is shouting you out too, Jay. Thank y'all for all the support. Thank y'all for watching. But let's get to the dialogue. I want to start with a story that I think has some urgency to it. A story that some of you all aren't talking about, but you probably should. I'm talking about, of course, y'all's boy, Donald Trump. The Trump White House is moving to rewrite history, literally. In a letter to Smithsonian Chief Lonnie Bunch, officials have ordered 8 of the institution's biggest museums to scrub what they refer to as divisive language from exhibits and align with the president's vision of American exceptionalism before the nation's 250th birthday. The list includes the African American History Museum, shocker, the National Museum of the American Indian, shocker, and the Air and Space Museum, a little bit of a shocker. Curators have to hand over their inventories, their grant records, even their social media posts in an effort to make, quote, content corrections within 120 days. Now, the Smithsonian says it's sticking to accuracy and to independence, but that's easier said than done because, as critics say, there's some political meddling in place that is undermining the possibility that the Smithsonian can remain a place that's free from partisanship. Now, Trump's team says it's collaborative, though the order follows his repeated attacks on museums for what he calls, and what his team calls, because he ain't got no real thoughts, race-centered ideology. The review, of course, wraps in 2026, assuming everybody complies. Now, there are a few things I want to say here. The first thing, and I have a book that I actually just finished writing on this that hopefully will come out next year or so. The first thing is the right wing has attempted to control the historical narrative for a long time. There was a time when the right wing would argue that history is neutral, that knowledge is neutral, that education is neutral, that books are neutral, and that we should stop trying to put ideology into it. And then at some point they said, you know what? You're right. It's not neutral. It's a battle and a struggle over values. And guess what? Our values are the right ones. And so the right wing over decades began to engage in significant battles over the content of history books. See, when we saw the ethnic studies debates, that was a different kind of pushback. I'm thinking not about the ethnic studies fights and struggles of the 50s and more importantly, the 60s and 70s, or more aggressively, the 60s and 70s. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the 1980s. I'm talking about the culture wars. I'm talking about the rise of Afrocentric thought. I'm talking about the rise of multiculturalism in school. I'm talking about the rise of ethnic studies in the K-12 curriculum, not just in the university curriculum. I'm talking about all these moments where people were beginning to fight and argue. I'm thinking about books like Stolen Legacy by George James. I'm thinking about people like Dr. Ben. I'm thinking about Sheikh Anta Diop. I'm thinking about all of the Africana scholars who made an attempt to recenter or to decenter Europe and to recenter African people, and in some ways the entire world, in ways that were more accurate to history. But there was always a fight. There was always a pushback. There was always a struggle over history books. These aren't new struggles, but what we're seeing right now is not more of the same. No. The right wing is doing something different right now, family. They really are. They are putting their thumbs on the scale in ways that are historically unprecedented. The right wing is saying that we don't like the narrative that's coming out, and so we want to silence it. Now, in the 80s, when Mary Lefkowitz was, arguing with, Tony Martin about, or with George James or with Dr. Ben Jockin about, the origins of Greek philosophy or, what happened to Cleopatra's nose or what have you, they were adjudicating competing claims about the past. Trump administration ain't doing that. They're not saying slavery didn't happen. They're just saying we don't want to talk about it. They're not saying, that structural racism didn't exist. They're just saying it doesn't make us feel good. They're saying that a race-centered ideology undermines the narrative of American exceptionalism. And so, as Michael Eric Dyson always used to say, this is the United States of amnesia, and Barbara Streisand provides the soundtrack. What is too painful to remember, we simply choose to forget. Trump is prosecuting that war on memory and history, but he's also putting the weight and the imprimatur of the White House and the executive branch onto that struggle. So that it's not just, hey, we're going to have a battle in the New York Times over what happened. Nah. We're going to make it illegal to do this story, or we're going to defund you if you tell that story. And so this is not what museums are supposed to be. This is not what the public sphere is supposed to be. This is not what democracy is supposed to be. But what else would you expect from the Donald? Anyway, moving on to another important story, maybe the most important story of the night for me, and that is the Gaza update. Israel has killed 61 people in Gaza City, at least 100 across the enclave. I'm going to add that to my ticker because and I'm not trying to be a newscaster here, so I'm comfortable just doing what I just did. I think it's more important to tell this story than it is to look like Tom Brokaw, whatever that means. Anyway, it's time for our Gaza update. At least 100 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli attacks across Gaza since dawn, according to medical sources. And the biggest target, the biggest focus of Israeli attacks in the last 24 hours has been Gaza City, where 61 people have been killed alone. Israeli airstrikes on groups that were trying to secure the distribution of aid north of Gaza City, according to Al Jazeera, killed at least 12 people on Wednesday. I'm going to say more. At least 37 people who were desperately seeking any food for their families were killed by Israeli fire, including 16 killed near an aid point north of Rafah, according to the Nasser hospital in southern Gaza, and another 14 killed and 113 wounded by Israeli forces waiting for aid in the north. That's according to the Gaza Emergency and Ambulance Service. Now, there's more. As gruesome as that is, as violent as that is, as bloody as that is, as indefensible as that is, as illegal as that is, it gets worse. In the last 24-hour reporting period, at least 8 people, including three children, died from Israeli-imposed starvation and malnutrition, bringing the total number of hunger-related deaths since October 7th to 235. Now, of those 235 hunger-related deaths, 106 of them have been children. That's according to the health ministry. Say what you want about everything else, and there's plenty to be said. This is an unrepentant, unmitigated, indefensible genocide. There's no erasing that. There's no mistaking that. There's no deodorizing that. It's just a fact at this point. But the idea that we could starve people against every human rights convention, every international law, is unspeakably cruel. But the fact that we could do it to babies, to children, there's just no explaining that. There's no defending that. There's no justifying that. The only word, and Fayaron said it, or Fia, horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. There's no other words for it. She also said, this is wild, and why aren't the civilians in the streets about this? Killing reports is like quintessential tyrant behavior. If you mean the civilians in Gaza, there are few civilians in Gaza left who have the ability to do anything other than what they're doing, which is survive. And yet they are still resisting. If you mean around the world, I think people are resisting, but I think you're right. If that's your point, I would agree with you that we need more resistance. We need more outrage. This is a genocide of historic proportion, and people are still fighting over the nomenclature. People are still defending Israel. People are still trying to make this about Hamas and make them the boogeyman. Whatever you think of Hamas, whatever you think of Israel, whatever you think of Gaza, whatever you think of Palestine, there's no excuse for killing journalists. There's no excuse for starving babies. There's no excuse for shooting innocent people. What are we talking about? I'm tired of hearing about ceasefire talks. I'm tired of hearing about treaties and agreements that don't get honored. This needs to stop now. And I'm not sure what will actually get this to stop. But, yeah, it's another conversation for another time. Jazz LP Dallas's finest said, what sane person could approve of what so-called Israel is doing? It's a fair question. I don't have the answer to it. I don't have any. I don't know how one could defend or explain this. I just don't. I'm looking at these comments. If you'll say the fact that they're starving anyone, but especially children, is disgusting. And let's be clear again. All of this is illegal. All of this contravenes human rights conventions and international law. Beatriz Abascal says cruelty. Unfortunately, as we've learned in other regimes, oftentimes the cruelty is the point. Again, the cruelty is the point. I'll just leave that there. Whew. This Palestine conversation never ends, but it's interesting to watch how it's morphed in the last 2 years, almost 2 years now. I can't believe that it's been almost 2 years. It's stunning. Anyway, I want to move to something important, but less urgent. Let's get back to American pop culture for a minute. Jussie Smollett says the Netflix doc that's coming out on him will reveal the real story of his 2019 case. With a Netflix documentary about the alleged hate crime hoax dropping later this month. That's what he was accused of. That's what he's convicted of. Actor Jussie Smollett and singer says the public still doesn't know what really happened. The Empire actor told Variety that he didn't stage the 2019 Chicago attack that we all know about, the one that police accused him of faking. Smollett, of course, was found guilty of that. Nonetheless, in 2021, specifically, he was charged and convicted of filing a false police report. But his conviction was overturned last year after serving just 6 days in jail. Was it overturned? I feel like it was more complicated than that. But my point isn't about the adjudication of the case. It's about the documentary. And the doc from the team behind the Tindler Swindler. Remember that? Y'all see that? Smollett blames the Chicago Police Department and former Mayor Rahm Emanuel, claiming that he was framed as a distraction from other scandals going on in Chicago. Now, Chicago does have a share of scandals, so a good distraction could be helpful. He also compared his treatment to Michael Jackson's, saying, "I saw firsthand how narratives are built." So I know a lot of you have strong feelings about Jussie Smollett. I know a lot of you agree with him, disagree with him, believe him, don't believe him, what have you. And I did one of the few, if not the only, one-on-one interviews with Jussie. It's right here on the channel. You should go check it out. Defund the police says it wasn't overturned. That's right. I didn't think the conviction was overturned. I thought it wasn't like, yeah. I feel a duty now to find the answer to that before we get off. Oh, it was overturned. I should always trust my team because they always be right, especially Princess. The Illinois Supreme Court has overturned a conviction against actor Jussie Smollett, who prosecutors accused of staging a racist and homophobic attack against himself in 2019. That was from the BBC. I see, yes. The state Supreme Court sided with Jussie Smollett's attorneys back then in 2019, who argued in their appeal that Smollett should not have been charged by a special prosecutor after the Cook County State Attorney's Office dropped charges in exchange for community service. I remember that now. Yes, that's true. And the argument at the time, and I shared it, was that same thing with Bill Cosby, right? It's not about whether you did it or not. It's about the fact that you can't make plea agreements, agree to them, to terms, you know, and then later on decide to do something different. It amounts to double jeopardy. That's the reason why it's not constitutionally passing muster. But again, my point's not about his conviction. It's about the story. There are people who have such a deep investment in the Jussie Smollett story, and I'm always fascinated by why. I'm fascinated by the people who don't trust police, don't believe in police, acknowledge the criminal justice system as fake, will fight to free Tory Lanez and R. Kelly and Diddy. But now, when it comes to Jussie Smollett, they're like, oh, the police said it, I believe it, that settles it. There are also people who believe, and this is my opinion, that this was a case of just overreach and over prosecution. Again, forget about innocence or forget about whether he's lying or not. If the police locked up everybody they thought lied on a police report or filed a false police report, be a line down the street. Then there are the people who don't believe him and who do believe him and believe that this is all a big hoax. I mean, all a big scandal, as Jussie's arguing in the Netflix documentary, that will be exposed. The truth will come out. I do believe at some point, whether through this doc or later on or sooner than that or whatever, the truth will come out. The truth will come out. I like Jussie Smollett. I know Jussie Smollett. And I have a relationship with Jussie Smollett. So, you know, I want to be transparent about that. I've had the conversation with him about his innocence and guilt off the record. And he hasn't said anything. There's no smoking gun. I don't have any deep secrets. I'll just say he has maintained his innocence. And I am not particularly interested in the innocence or guilt of Jussie Smollett as much as I'm interested in how the criminal legal system has played a role in this, in what I would consider an outsized role in this. There's just so many more things that Henry Jackson just said it. There's so many more important concerns I'm focused on being that I live in. Washington does not allow me the bandwidth to think about Jussie Smollett. Right, that's what I'm kind of saying. Like, this is an interesting place for so many people to invest their time. People have their own opinions and beliefs on it. That's up to them. I'm not here to litigate or relitigate the Jussie Smollett case, because I don't think it matters. I think it's just a question of what this case and what the story says about the bigger issue of policing in this country. Anna Botham said kind of what I'm thinking a little bit. CPD overstepped in vengeance, didn't build up enough evidence. Once again, cops being lazy. I think that's all true. Again, innocence or guilt aside, what did the CPD, Chicago Police Department, do? And did they operate appropriately? These are the questions that I think we have to ask. These are things that I think we need to wrestle with. And I don't think we have, not effectively. Anyway, we got one more story for you, for your head tops, before we go. And it's Sha'Carri Richardson. It's an interesting story. Sha'Carri Richardson is breaking her silence. As many of you know, she was recently arrested for, sorry, I got the hiccups. She was arrested for domestic violence. And that arrest has sparked a much bigger debate in the process. The 100-meter world champ apologized directly to her boyfriend, Christian Coleman, in an Instagram post, saying her apology, quote, should be just as loud as her actions. Police say that Richardson grabbed Coleman's backpack, blocked his path, shoved him into a wall, and may have thrown headphones at him. Coleman declined to press charges. Now, the case has some asking, do female athletes face the same backlash for domestic violence as men? When Chris Brown assaulted Rihanna in 2009, it led to years of public condemnation. It led to lost endorsements and an enduring stain on his career. Richardson's supporters have argued that she deserves the same scrutiny if the allegations are true. Others say that there's nuance, noting differences in injury, severity, and public perception, but also acknowledging that domestic violence is unacceptable regardless of the gender. But for now, Richardson says she's focusing on self-reflection and facing the situation head on. Couple things here. You know, Sha'Carri Richardson, first of all, is somebody who I have deep sympathy for, and deep interest in terms of her career as a runner, her life, and some of the struggles, some of the pain, some of the trauma that she experienced in those last two major, I guess, Olympic cycles. That's the first thing. Second, her actions with her boyfriend, based on what she said and based on what the other evidence is, seems to be pretty unanimous that she was the aggressor and that she was completely in the wrong. That's an important story to tell. What she did was indefensible. What she did was wrong. And what she did deserves and merits accountability, full accountability. We got to be honest about that. There's no but there. Just accountability. Indefensible behavior needs to be accountable. Where I disagree with some of these folk, there are people comparing this to Chris Brown and Rihanna. Did you see the photos of Rihanna? Did you see what Chris Brown did to Rihanna? To say that she deserves the same consequences for grabbing her boyfriend's backpack and blocking his path and pushing him and maybe throwing headphones is absurd. Again, nobody should put their hands on anybody. Nobody should touch anybody. We don't get a special pass or a special permission slip if you are a male or a woman or whatever, right? Like it doesn't matter. Nobody put nobody hands on nobody. And those who do should be held accountable, right? We start there. But it's like saying nobody should steal. Sure, I stole a candy bar. You robbed investors at a multinational financial organization. I stole $1 worth of products. You stole billions. The principle is the same, but to impose some kind of Kantian categorical imperative on us, as if, which still is about the moral contradictions and the moral transgression, not about the actual consequence. In other words, yes, everybody who steals should be held accountable. That doesn't mean that every act of theft should be seen the same. Yes, if Sha'Carri had done to Christian Coleman what Chris Brown did to Rihanna, then she should be treated the same. And conversely, if Chris Brown had done to Rihanna what Ms. Richardson did to Mr. Coleman, then I would say Chris should deserve less penalty and more of what she's getting right now. That being said, we also cannot ignore the realities of gender. We cannot ignore the reality that men have the capacity to impose far more, biological males, or people who have the physicality of those who are assigned male at birth. Whatever language you want to use, they can fuck some shit up. Particularly when the person on the other side is not that. And so part of why we pay more attention to instances of domestic violence when it comes to men is because oftentimes it's accompanied, and I don't know the stats on this, so I don't want to speak to the statistics on severity of violence, but I do know the capacity to impose severe forms of violence is there with men. I think that's what people are paying attention to. Again, men are victims of sexual assault, intimate partner violence. Men get assaulted in lots of ways. Boys get assaulted in lots of ways. And we often ignore that because of masculinity, right? And our expectations, our gendered expectations of what male bodies are supposed to do. That's all problematic. No dispute from me in any way there. We can have that conversation and we can say all that without pretending that what Sha'Carri Richardson did, excuse me, I think I've been corrected here in the comments, what Sha'Carri Richardson did to her boyfriend is the same as what Chris Brown did to Rihanna. That's absurd. And we have to have space to say all things aren't the same. And it's not because the gender is different, it's because the actual actions are different. Anyway, y'all, that's it for Night School. Thank you for watching. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. I had a great time talking to y'all tonight. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're so inclined, hit the join button and become part of the monthly paid membership of this channel, which gives us the financial structure and infrastructure we need to put out content and to put out content on time. It allows us to get the staff ready. It allows us to get the tech right. It allows us to get a studio. It allows us to do all the things that are necessary to do this even better. But if you don't want to make the monthly commitment, feel free to hit us right now on the social media or the social finance apps. I guess what you call them. Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. Hit me on one of them. And you can drop anything. You can drop $1. We'd love it. You can drop $1 million. We'd really love it. And anything in between, we'd be grateful for. Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. We appreciate it. Drop something in. It allows us to pay our bills. It allows us to keep Night School rolling. And Office Hours is coming back for a new season. Coffee and Books episodes will be up soon. And Mumia Abu-Jamar I just spoke to today and from the Classroom in the Cell. We'll be back in just a few weeks. He's been dealing with some health issues. That's why you haven't heard from him. But we're grateful. We're grateful just to be here. We're grateful to have this channel. We're grateful to have this program. It's been more than a year of Night School, man. And it's been an absolute joy to be here with you all. And it's going to be a joy to keep being here with y'all. I ain't going nowhere. It's going to be a joy to keep the content going, to keep the ideas flowing, and to keep the community thriving. Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle will allow us to get the support we need. We're at the midway point in the month, and we could use the help. But if you can't, just keep watching, keep sharing, and of course, keep studying, because that is what Night School is